It's Tuesday, February 28, 2012. I'm Aaron Dyke sitting in on this Infowars Nightly News. Coming up later in the broadcast, we're going to be joined by Gary Franchi, who's now leading one of the super PACs for Ron Paul. He's also done his work with the Reality Report, and he's going to comment on tonight's primaries in Michigan and Arizona. But there is no doubt Ron Paul and all the people supporting him virally on the web have broken the false illusion of the media-controlled paradigm. The internet revolution has begun. The firewall is down on that. But first, we'll turn to news. The NDA nullification passes in Virginia Senate by a veto-proof, not a 39-1 vote. They already passed a version in the House. It will have to go back through the House after they added an amendment, but it passed there already 96-4, so it is expected to pass again. Nonetheless, they're urging people there to thank the Senate, urge the House to pass it again, and urge the governor not to try to kill the bill. He's kind of voiced opposition to the legislation already, Governor Bob McDonald. Anyway, there's a quote from Delegate Bob Marshall, who is named as the bill's primary sponsor. During World War II, the federal government incarcerated tens of thousands of loyal Japanese Americans in the name of national security. By this bill, Virginia declares it will not participate in similar modern-day efforts. I'll declare it, too. I won't participate in these modern-day efforts. So are other states and other local communities. Everyone should get behind nullifying the NDA Act and let them know. Remember when people protested against the Patriot Act? Where is that movement again? This is ridiculous. We're on a slippery slope to pure tyranny, pure hell, people. It has nothing to do with Obama or any other monkey in office in some suit. Meanwhile, rights groups are also protesting and petitioning the FAA on the use of drones inside the U.S. In those airspaces. Watchdogs warn that UAVs increase First Amendment risk for would-be political dissidents. I mean, naturally, somehow we sat by while they used drones to kill innocent civilians in Pakistan and Iraq and Afghanistan, all these other places. And now look, in just a couple of years, it's come home to roost. Now they're using them to surveil farmers in the Western world, in the United States, in Europe to enforce codes, in the UK. And if you don't think they're going to be shooting people down in the future, I don't think you see where this is going. Anyway, Steve Watson writes, the consequences of increased government surveillance through the use of drones are even more troubling, according to the petition's quoted notes. The ability to link facial recognition capabilities on drone cameras to the FBI's next-generation identification database of DHS IDENT database, two of the largest collections of biometric data in the world, increases the First Amendment risk for would-be political dissidents. No, I think it's perfectly reasonable for them just to fly drones wherever they want and move towards that They Live tasering drone that admittedly is part of their unveiling designs already. Meanwhile, Robert Fisk at the London Independent has written that the new Cold War has already started in Syria. Yeah, I mean, of course, they've already started covert wars in Syria, Iran, and a lot of other places, but it's even more out in the open now. He writes, in part, if Iran obtains nuclear weapons capability, I think others across the Middle East will want to develop nuclear weapons. But he goes on to point out they already have them in Israel by the hundreds, but nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to fearmonger about Arab states getting nuclear weapons. It may be dangerous, but that is the game already underway. How can you blame these nations for trying to update their status on the geopolitical chessboard from a mere pawn to some other face piece? Well, everything's dangerous. I just hope that war doesn't further escalate here. Congress has a new job approval low of only 10% in Gallup's latest poll. In late 2011, it was already at a low of 11%. Later, a brief bounce up to 13%. They've already found Congress at a 9% approval rating, an all-time low in a CBS News poll back in November 2011, only a couple years ago. People still not behind Congress, hating them more and more. 86% of people totally against Congress, not approving of what they do, even as Obama gets brief bumps for this and that as he runs for re-election. The overall picture clearly shows a deterioration of faith in the establishment media and the establishment politics. The internet has totally leveled that playing field, and we'll get more into that in a minute in regards to the Ron Paul revolution. Meanwhile, a judge sides with Monsanto and ridicules small farmers' right to grow. That's according to the OSGATA blog. They've written on February 24th, Judge Naomi Buchwald handed down her ruling on a motion to dismiss the case of organic seed growers and trade assistant et al. Versus Monsanto after hearing oral arguments on January 31st in federal district court in Manhattan. Her ruling to dismiss the case brought against Monsanto on behalf of organic farmers, seed growers, and agricultural organizations representing farmers and citizens was met with great disappointment by the plaintiffs. And what you see here is Monsanto aggressively going after people for this crossover pollution of organic crops or even just conventional crops with their patented seed and then suing them. And they cite that, oh, it's only been a few cases that actually made it to court. There's been hundreds of farmers who've been threatened and, they've settled and been intimidated and gone after this. We had people come up in Dallas at the event where Alex spoke at the Lakewood Theater, just randomly telling us about how his father had been pursued by Monsanto, intimidated and forced into a payout. It's happening everywhere. And then these judges act like it's not happening, that there's no evidence of harm done, supposedly. No, it's an aggressive takeover of agriculture worldwide. They're shutting down all the farmers in India and Africa and other parts of the developing world, and they're really challenging it here in North America and Europe as well. We've covered that at length, but here you have another stepping stone to Monsanto's total takeover and a total slap in the face to the organic farmers. Now, there's a good quote here from Maine organic seed farmer Jim Garrettson, who's the president of the lead plaintiff of OSCATA. We reject as naive and undefendable the judge's assertion that Monsanto's vague public relations commitment should be a source of comfort to plaintiffs. The truth is we are under threat and we do not believe in Monsanto. The truth is that the American farmers and the American people do not believe Monsanto. Family farmers deserve our day in court, and this flawed ruling will not deter us from continuing to seek justice. The problem is Monsanto's totally infiltrated the government, taken over the FDA and at various times the USDA. Right now, Tom Vilsack is totally in their pocket. Right now, other people in the FDA are as well. Michael Taylor, a very, very notable revolving door client for Monsanto, a former lawyer for them, later a VP. You've also got the judiciary bought out, not on this chart showing people like Hillary Clinton, Michael Taylor, and others crossover from government to Monsanto. Bush people, Clinton people, Obama people, really doesn't matter, all behind Monsanto. You've also got Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, a former Monsanto lawyer inside the firm, now in the Supreme Court, and he actually presided over a lawsuit for Monsanto, which was Monsanto versus Geerton Seed Farm, number 09475 in the Supreme Court. Another conflict of interest on the Supreme Court was Stephen Breyer. He actually recused himself. Clarence Thomas refused to recuse himself. Stephen Breyer's brother is also a federal judge, Charles Breyer. He had already heard Monsanto cases, and yet when the Monsanto case came to the Supreme Court, he was almost going to hear it. I mean, good thing he recused himself. That is notable. But why didn't Clarence Thomas, who worked directly for Monsanto? The truth is they've got great influence in all the branches of government, and it's really a big behemoth beast that we've got to fight against. In other news, it's been revealed that the U.S. plans to charge Assange. That's according to new emails leaked from Stratfor. An internet email to Stratfor analysts on January 26th of last year, the vice president of intelligence, Fred Burton, responded to a media report concerning U.S. investigations targeting WikiLeaks with the comment, "We have a sealed indictment on Assange," and lots of other comments as well. This comes as WikiLeaks decided to release millions of emails, more than 5 million, from the Texas headquartered, the Austin-based, in fact, Stratfor global intelligence company, which airs as a private intelligence company, but actually provides confidential intelligence reports for various parts of government, including Homeland Security, the U.S. Marines, and the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, as well as a number of contractors and big firms, including Dow Chemical, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon. Among other cases, they cite the example of how they said you have to take control of them. Control means financial, sexual, or psychological control, where they try to control an Israeli intelligence informant who had information on the medical condition of Hugo Chavez. And just by the way, since we're talking about Monsanto, I want to point out that people like Lockheed Martin, people like McDonald's, the fast food corporation, are all on the board of directors for Monsanto. And you've got all those former secretaries of defense, from Rumsfeld to the others, that Italian guy from the 80s and the Reagan administration. And so there is the corporate governance of Monsanto, their board of directors. And it was Lockheed, but apparently that's changed in the last few weeks, because I looked at this pretty recently. But you do see McDonald's USA on there. You see Procter & Gamble on there. You see the Sara Lee Corporation. A lot of very important people, as well as Michael Taylor, Clarence Thomas, William D. Ruckelshaus, and a lot of other notable judges and government position people. In fact, let's just take one more look at that Venn diagram showing just some of the overlap of U.S. government officials who are also part of Monsanto. And moving on, we have the secret media war of 2012. And this is about the Ron Paul campaign, but it's not just about getting Ron Paul elected to office. It's about taking down the whole veil of the left-right paradigm, the whole false media channel thing where Fox News is supposedly in opposition to MSNBC and ABC. It's about the whole corporate sponsorship by the world government players, by the billionaire elitists who always want to tell us how to live and what to do, how they support the media corporations. And really a great article at the Daily Bell by Ron Holland. He writes, in part, it appears the mainstream media elites in the U.S. may also worry about their future ability to control public opinion and elections in America. In the last week, we have seen MSNBC on the left purge Pat Buchanan from the network, and Fox News on the right eliminate Judge Andrew Napolitano's Freedom Watch after both expressed opinions and views that threaten the political institutions, control, and goals of the power elite. The first question asked must be, why now rather than later, as after all, both men have expressed their anti-establishment views for years without repression. I believe the answer is the growing power of the alternative media and the successful educational outfit of the Ron Paul campaign, both of which use the internet to get their freedom message out. The establishment media primarily exists to defend the establishment. The growing readership of alternative news and opinion sites are making their job increasingly difficult. When you add in the growing numbers of Paul campaign supporters who appear now to be effectively immune to the power elite propaganda, the media elites have a real problem. And they do. In fact, he starts out the article with an accidentally microphone comment from a reporter at a Pentagon briefing. He said, see this room? 2/3 of us will be laid off when Ron Paul is president. When Ron Paul is president. A hot microphone picked up a reporter attacking Ron Paul recently. Just totally bombshell. They know they're under threat. They know they're propping up all these lies, but it's totally a Humpty Dumpty situation. They can't put the pieces back together again. And that's what's so encouraging about Ron Paul. Not that it's one man. You're not going to have one man get in the president and fix everything magically. First, you got to fire all those advisors. You got to convince the Senate and the Congress to stop taking those bribes. All kinds of other reforms have to happen. There isn't a silver magic bullet. But what's even more significant than the electability is the mass of groundswell support for Ron Paul. True grassroots supporters who know they won't support the establishment, who don't believe these lies anymore, and are pursuing avenues apart from that. That is way bigger than any one election. I guarantee you that's why you've seen the Bilderberg Group concerned about him even back in the 2008 elections when it was not clear that he even had a chance in hell of getting elected. And in fact, he goes on here. I just want to read more because this is such a great article. The 2012 election really is different, writes Ron Holland. He says, this election will not be different because of the defeat of Barack Obama or the election of Romney, Santorum, or Gingrich. That will not change the direction of the nation. The banks will still get bailed out. The federal budget will not be balanced, and our national debt will continue to grow. The neocons will still determine foreign policy, and the Federal Reserve will continue to create money out of nothing for a few special interests. I believe, however, the 2012 presidential election will be the final death rattle for the American political, financial, and media establishment and their ability to control the voting through the news and opinions used to create public opinion. And yes, they do create public opinion. They've been doing it since the days of Walter Lippmann, Edward Bernays, Ivy Lee, and all those other propagandists who learned to brand the hated Rockefellers and make them suddenly philanthropists, who used their skills to fool the public into supporting Hitler and other dictators. These are the people who branded PR campaigns that we now see today, all the paid propaganda news, the propaganda placement, as Alex calls it. Those walls are coming down. That's what's happened through the internet. And they can control the internet. But can you put the genie back in the bottle? Can you stop the awakening that's already happened? No, I don't think so. And we need to have strength in that fact as we move forward, whatever happens with the Ron Paul campaign. Moving on, ethicists argue killing newborn babies should be allowed. I mean, just absolutely devastatingly horrible. I don't know how they put the stuff on paper. Speaking of Hitler, it just blows away the things he did, really, that they would put it on paper that this is okay to carry out infanticide up to the years 2 and 3. And this is a Paul Joseph Watson report about the shocking reminder that eugenicist beliefs still underpin the medical establishment. And he's got how so-called bioethicists, it's always just a cover name to make them sound friendly when they're horrible. Alberto Giuliani of Monash University in Melbourne and Francesca Minerva at the Center for Applied Philosophy and Public Ethics at the University of Melbourne say it's okay to kill a baby even after it's born, arguing that both fetuses and newborns do not have the same moral status as actual persons. Oh, first, it's a fetus doesn't have the right to life and abortion's okay. They sold us on that ever since Roe versus Wade in the 70s. Now it's somehow newborns. They don't have personhood once they're already born, breathing out in the air apart from the mother's womb. How could they put this on paper? I don't know. I really don't know. And they say this doesn't have to do with cases where the fetus's health is an issue or where the newborn's health is an issue, which is already a tainted debate in Hobson's choice. But they say it's the fact that both are potential persons that's morally irrelevant. In fact, adoption may not be reasonable for some parents, and they should be allowed to kill newborns. I can't believe what's in this report. I don't even know if I could be articulate on it. It's just disgusting. And they go on to discuss how there's already cases on paper where you don't have a right to life, and so now that needs to extend to newborns. And they bring up embryo stem cells. They bring up fetuses where abortion is permitted and where capital punishment is legal. Now, I think there's problems with capital punishment, mainly because they put so many innocent people in prison because the system's so corrupt. Of course, murderers do deserve punishment. You know, the Old Testament talks about eye for an eye. Jesus refutes that. That's a whole moral code thing. People could debate on a larger issue, but you can't say newborns are equal to criminals who have been convicted of a crime and are put to death. I mean, that's a totally different issue. You can argue the embryonic stem cells. You can argue the abortion thing. That has nothing to do with newborns, and it's just more hatred for the family. I'm not going to continue to rant on that. You can form your own opinion. I'm not here trying to give it to you, but I just get so upset when I see the same agenda being pushed for more than 100 years. Anyway, we've got Gary Franchi coming up after this break, but we turn now to the Daily Quote. It's from Dwight D. Eisenhower. I think that people want peace so much that one day government had better get out of their way and let them have it. One day they better let them have in peace. Of course, Eisenhower's become more famous for his quotes warning against the military-industrial complex. Also in that speech, warning against the scientific elite who are going to take over this country and against the technocratic scientific dictatorship that had already emerged and threatened his own presidency. More famous for that stuff than for his heroic general status in World War II and for his presidency itself. And why? Why did he warn about the military-industrial complex? Why did he warn that the governments had better let people have the peace they seek? Because he knew the Cold War was going to be used for decades to take powers away, to take control over the people and give more power to the centralized government, to that shadow government. And if you read Fletcher Prouty's The Secret Team, I find it very interesting, the account of how, according to him, Eisenhower had a very real peace prospect talk with Khrushchev. They really wanted to nail down something that would actually be tangible I believe that was just right before he stepped down, about a year before, and suddenly that U-2 plane fell out of the sky and the peace talks were off. And Fletcher Prouty at least points the finger right at Alan Dulles, right in the middle of all those controversies and all those secret plots, connected with the start of the CIA, with his Skull and Bones friends that he gave legal representation to, connected right with his Rockefeller friends. I think he's even married into the family, and right with Eisenhower's Secretary of State, his brother, the other Dulles. And so that's very interesting that Eisenhower warned against that military-industrial complex, that they wouldn't let us have peace because of that U-2 spy plane thing that perhaps he couldn't speak out about directly at the time, but understood. Then we saw it happen only a few years later with Kennedy. Think about it. Just think about it. And it was Kennedy who said, if you don't allow peaceful revolution when it's inevitable, that you're going to get the other kind of revolution, the kind we don't want to see. We're here with an internet information-based war, and hopefully we can bring things in that way. There's been a lot of hopeful progress just in the power of people to awaken to this false system, and we've been heard. We'll see what happens from here. We'll be back after this on the Infowars Nightly News. Don't forget to consider subscribing to prisonplanet.tv, helping us reach even more people with this important message and helping get the word out in general about the topics we cover here. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in a moment.
Comfort zone, because these people aren't playing games. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. We're going to organize. Humanity's going to come together. We are swinging muskets here, toe-to-toe with the globalists. They're bloodied. We're bloodied. It is absolute, total war. Signing these evil 1776 flags. Doesn't get any more out of control than that, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty un-American what we're doing here at Infowars.com. I mean, not only are we promoting liberty, but we're selling 1776 flags. Now that is Al-Qaeda.
And we are back from break here on this Infowars Nightly News broadcast. Joining us now to analyze the Ron Paul campaign and the tremendous grassroots efforts that have happened through the internet, through people just turning away from that mainstream media system and saying, hell no, we know what's really going on, is Gary Franchi. He also leads the Revolution PAC. Thanks for joining us, Gary.
Thanks for having me on, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And so you were telling me behind the scenes, you guys have developed a new exit poll strategy. Of course, today is the Michigan primary, the state where Mitt Romney's daddy was governor, and also the Arizona primary. And there's notable things happening there. But why don't you tell us overall what's going on with this exit polling thing you've got going on?
Well, basically, Aaron, what most people don't realize is ever since the whole Bush-Gore debacle, the whole hanging Chad situation, they sort of devised some solution, right? Problem, reaction, solution, so that they would have one company controlling all the exit polling for all states. And that company is called Edison Research. Now, ever since that took place, Edison Research has strategically placed exit pollers at all the different polling locations and have been providing those results to Fox, MSNBC, CNN, Associated Press, and the like. So if there's a problem, then it's only every single network is going to have the same exit polling results because they're relying on one company. So what we've done is we've basically taken a mobile application, and it's called Poll Watcher 1.5. And this poll watching application, I can show it to you right here once I get it fired up. What it does is it allows for our people. We have people right now in Arizona covering the whole state of Arizona, covering the whole state of Michigan, and they're asking people, who are you voting for? And what is the, it's just a simple one question answer. So it looks like, okay, we're verifying, and, oh, looks like I still have a test login, so mine's not actually working. But the people on the ground, it's a very simple format. Who you vote for, they click Ron Paul or Santorum or Romney or whoever, and then that gets tabulated by a central database.
Gingrich, that's the other creature.
Gingrich, yeah, we forget him. Well, actually, according to our early statistics, and forgive me if I'm rushing through this, but we're in a hurry. We've got Newt Gingrich. Looks like he's coming in third right now, according to our exit polling. And Ron Paul is coming in fourth, and that's for Arizona. Romney is coming in first, and Santorum at second place. These are early exit polling results that we're seeing. And as far as Michigan is concerned, we're seeing Newt Gingrich is far behind in fourth place, and Ron Paul and Santorum are pretty close in a race for second place. So Romney's all the way in front with we're looking at 96 points for him.
Now, do you have actual numbers? Because they've got spokespersons for the Ron Paul campaign, and they said the key in Michigan is that it gets over the 15% threshold, because those, even though it's a primary rather than a caucus, at 15%, you do have the ability to capture delegates.
That is true. The 15% mark is where the delegate count comes in. That's where they start to award them to you. I do not have those specific percentages as of yet. As the day goes on, as the reports start to come in, we'll have some final tally numbers. But remember, we're doing an independent exit polling strategy, and our numbers, we're going to just balance them against the official tallies and see if they jive, because we are using scientific statistics and census data to strategically place our exit pollers so that they hit a specific number that provides a scientifically random sample of the voting population. That's how we get our numbers. So we have to balance that against the actual polling numbers. And at the end of the day, it's the official poll numbers that are going to be tabulated that you'll see if Paul gets that 15%.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch again in the state where Mitt Romney's father was governor, that whole political dynasty family that's been doing politics since the 1600s, or at least the 1700s. I forget which century. At any rate, he's slated to lose that as they continue to prop up Santorum. What do you think of people like Michael Moore on the left saying, yeah, let's support Santorum, just to make a joke of this whole thing and prop up Obama, even though supposedly Michael Moore's against the wars, and here you have the perfect anti-war candidate, but not a word from so many people on the left. Now, I know there's a lot of bleed-over support from moderate Democrats and loosely aligned people who are left-leaning supporting Ron Paul, but you don't see it within the trenches of the establishment left-leaners.
Well, I think it's just a distraction. They want to make sure that no one's looking at Ron Paul. They want to make sure no one's looking at his message. There's been some photos floating around the web. I'm sure you've probably seen them or even reported on them of the Romney Stadium, the whole mock-up they did there. And there was maybe like 300 or 400 people there. They couldn't even fill the stadium. They were on the center of the football field. And then you look at the picture of Paul filling up an entire stadium at a university. And the compare and contrast to who the people are paying attention to and what the media has, they got to do tight shots for Romney and make it look like the room's full. So through the media manipulation and of people like Michael Moore doing a simple bait and switch, focus on Santorum and make a joke of it, that's how they're distracting the American people.
Yeah, but you brought up the real important point. We just covered this in the earlier segment. I know you weren't watching, but it'll be later on the Infowars Nightly News. The secret media war of 2012. That's a story at the Daily Bell from Ron Holland, and he really highlights the point that whatever happens electorally, what's really happening here is that true grassroots revolution beginning to reach a tipping point. The entire media charade coming down. Nobody trusts them anymore. That dovetails with the recent Gallup poll, which shows an all-time low in their polling sample of 10% approval in Congress. You've got the previous CBS poll from a few months ago showing even 9% of approval for Congress. And people really are waking up in those respects. And that has been the true momentum of this campaign. Whatever happens in terms of the official vote, whatever happens at a brokered convention, because there's multiple fronts to this war.
Well, the media front, as you well know, I mean, look what happened after, or I should say during the 2008 election. There was so much media bias against Paul, and it was networks like yours and now networks like ours as well, who are trumpeting and standing on the front lines and giving the people an alternative perspective. And they're doing whatever they can to sort of discredit our efforts and this and that. But the reality is we don't have the bureaucratic editorial overhead that the mainstream media has, because we have people who are on the ground feeding us information real time from YouTube and social networks and such, that we can get out the message faster than they can. So and look, how many times, Aaron, you know the answer to this as well as I do, but how many times have stories that you guys have been reporting on suddenly been reported on weeks later by the mainstream media? Our message is so ahead of the curve, and they're always going to be playing catch up because we don't have the same overhead. And that's why the American people come to our messages first. That's why they come to our broadcasts to hear what is really happening. And they're not trusting the mainstream media anymore.
Well, it's because they're painting over the truth, and even they do a quick paint by numbers brush over. It still takes time for them to kind of distort those things and spin them into what they think is going to be useful reports. But really, that whole dam is breaking, and people are more and more turning to the alternative press, turning to the internet. Even if they clamp down on the internet, there's going to be other alternative movements. And I think that's the real big story of 2012 and the support for Ron Paul.
Oh, there's no question about that. There's alternative networks springing up everywhere, the alternative radio stations. I mean, look, anybody with the webcam or an iPhone can simply do video blogs, upload them to YouTube, and that can spread across the web faster than the mainstream media can catch up with it. And that's why you see the mainstream media basically dying on the vine as we become more successful as the days progress. Yeah,
well, they've cited in this report that I already mentioned from Ron Holland how they captured a reporter accidentally on a hot microphone saying, "See this room? 2/3 of us get laid off when Ron Paul is president." That's what they're scared of, because they know they're paid liars, and that kind of thing falls off if people awaken to the truth and demand the truth. And that's why they're turning to Infowars and all the other alternative sites. Now, turning back to your Revolution PAC, tell us about the latest commercial and the other efforts you have underway there.
Oh, well, thank you for bringing that up, Aaron. The latest commercial we have released, it's titled T for Two. Simply go to our YouTube channel. You can find it, or just do a simple search for the word T for Two and Rev Pack, and you'll find our commercial. It's really cute. You might be able to pull it and play it on your show here, but it's got two kids playing senior citizens, and they're discussing Social Security. I don't want to give away all the twists, but it's a really lighthearted and fun commercial. We're getting a lot of great feedback. And we've already raised a significant amount of money to get it broadcast on the Super Tuesday states. We're still trying to raise money, and hopefully we can make that happen.
What's your overall take on the rise of super PACs and the whole debate over corporate-driven free speech and true free speech, and where that's headed with the political paradigm?
Well, in my opinion, I think super PACs are only going to be in existence for probably this election cycle. They're going to try to do whatever they can to close those loopholes in the Citizens United case, to shut them down, because, I mean, our super PAC, we've been accepting donations in quite large sums from a lot of people, but we also accept small donations from grassroots individuals. So we have a pretty fair balance between the two. But then you have people like the Gingrich campaign, who are receiving tens of millions of dollars from singular individuals, and that can be a problem when you want to have a fair election. I mean, that means really people can come in and buy up the elections. So I have a feeling that they're probably going to try and close those loopholes coming into the next election season. And so, hey, I think this is the last hurrah. If you want to fight for freedom now and you want to get it done, you got to donate the millions to the Revolution PAC so that we can broadcast these commercials, so we can get our boots in the ground, in all the Super Tuesday states. We can do the independent exit polling, and we can provide the alternative media solutions that are required to awaken, aware, and activate the American people.
Well, you have reached people with your ads apart from the official Ron Paul campaign. And then separately, all those great grassroots activists, keep up your efforts because you are scaring the hell out of the system. And I think we all know that from what we've seen. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Gary Franchi. Any closing comments?
No, just keep up the great work you guys are doing, and we'll see you on the other side.
All right, thanks for joining us. And that is all for tonight's Infowars Nightly News. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, spread the word about this broadcast. And if you want to support us financially, we don't have the billions, we don't have the foundations behind us, but we do have the power of the truth, and that's what we're trying to work with. Thanks for watching, and spread the word. Good night.